Thanks for tuning in to the Medevac podcast, powered by the Robert Irvine Foundation, whose mission is to support and strengthen the physical and mental well-being of our nation's heroes and their families. I'm one of your hosts, David Reid.
And I'm your other host, Christian Meyers. Thank you very much for joining us today on the Medevac podcast. If you're new here, there's a price for the show. You have to share it with a friend or family member if you're getting something out of today's episode. We've got a pretty unique guest. You know the name, you know the face. We have Vincent Vargas, who goes by Rocco, joining us today. If you don't know Vincent or Rocco, he is a former 275 Ranger for about 4 years, got out, became a Border Patrol agent. He now sits as a Border Patrol ambassador, helping with docuseries, kind of explaining who they are, what they do, how to understand the Border Patrol. He's also an actor and writer. You might know him from series such as Mayans.
Mayans, yeah.
Pretty cool stuff. So welcome. Thanks for being here, Rocco.
Show, brother.
Thank you.
Hell of a title here.
Yeah, I know.
You do a lot of things.
I think it's part of the post-traumatic stress. Some people do drinking. I just continue to do more.
Yeah.
It's gonna be almost one of those like middle ages titles, where we're talking about this long list of things that you do. So let's definitely peel that back and start from the fundamentals of, it obviously took a long time to get to where you're at today, establishing that resume. What inspired you to join the military? How did your path take to that direction?
Yeah, I was playing college baseball. I've been playing baseball since I was 4 years old, and I thought, like anyone else who plays baseball, hopes and dreams of becoming a professional athlete. I was in my third year of college and lost a full ride scholarship. I was in Kentucky, very foreign land for myself, growing up in Los Angeles.
Sure.
And I became academically ineligible. And at that point, there was no way of getting that opportunity back. I tried to play some baseball in other places, independent pros places I tried out for, didn't make the teams. And so I kind of left me working at a Texas Roadhouse in Kentucky, not wanting to tell my dad I just kind of destroyed all my future dreams of being a professional baseball player. And when I got off work, I was at a Buffalo Wild Wings, and I was watching the news, and it was CNN or Fox or something, where they had a Marine putting an American flag over the Saddam statue as his unit pulled it down.
Oh, yeah.
Very famous kind of visual that, if you guys remember that's back in 2002-ish. And I saw the family he interviewed, and his parents and his brothers and sisters were all emotional, crying, very proud of their son and their brother. And I'm sitting there drunk at a Buffalo Wild Wings thinking, shit, I have not done anything in my life to make my family feel that way about myself. I also have a daughter who was born and I haven't even seen yet because I was living in Kentucky. Okay. Didn't have the money to travel. And it was kind of that moment where I can go serve in combat. I can serve this country and kind of answer a lot of questions about myself, test myself to do something that I believe my parents would be proud of. 3, now have the money to support my daughter. And that's kind of the next decision. The next day I went to the recruiters, and not knowing what I wanted to do, nobody gets this full story, but I originally went to be a Marine, and I have a daughter, so I'm trying to, where's the bonus? You know what I mean? Yeah. I went to the Marines and asked, is there some kind of bonus? And they said, the bonus was being a Marine. And I was like, well, fuck this, dude.
Good recruiter.
Yeah, cool. I'm out. I left there. And then the next cool thing I can think of was a Navy SEAL. It's just something that you hear.
Sure, yeah.
So I went to the Navy recruiter and asked, is there a Navy SEAL contract? He goes, there is, but I don't have one right now. All I have is an underwater welder that you can transition into buds, And I was like, no, I was old enough to know, I want it in my contract. I'm not going to sign no dotted line without the contract. Yeah. So if you don't put it in the contract, I want nothing to do with it. So I told him, I said, no, unless you get a slot that says BUDS training, I'm not interested. He knew I worked at a Texas Roadhouse, so he'd come visit me often trying to get me to come back. And then one of the times I went to go look at another opportunity, Air Force was never an option for me. I just wasn't interested. An Army recruiter was like, what are you looking for? I said, I want a hard job. I want like a special operations type job. And he goes, okay, well, let's go look at these things. And he showed me Ranger and Special Forces, and both of those looked interesting. Like I was cool with either of them. Yeah. I took the ASVAB and scored a 108 was the GT score, I believe it was. And at the time he needed a 110 for Special Forces. And so they didn't have a 2-point waiver at that time. Later on, eventually, I heard they did, but this time they didn't. And so Ranger was the only option. So I got into the Army with a Ranger contract. Option 40 is what they call it now. And 6 months later, boom, went to basic training.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how did that experience work for you, going through the pipeline?
I was 23 at the time, and being 23 in basic training, I was an old man. Yeah. You know, I was a senior dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the really interesting part was this was October of 2003. There was a handful of us. There was me and 5 others that were 25. Another guy was 26. Another guy was 32. And so like it wasn't odd, but it was, right? The young dudes are like, I don't know how to fucking, shave. And I'm like, bitch, fucking how hard is that? You know, and
these children.
I'm over here wanting to like fight all these dumbasses, right? Like you stupid fuck, right? So eventually it's like all of us older dudes are squad leaders and platoon sergeant, right? And so we were able to kind of father some of the young dudes and keep each other company and tell each other our own life stories. And, everyone had something at that point. The 23, 24, 25-year-olds, we've experienced a little bit of life already. And so we were just like, we all had Ranger contracts and we're all like, let's just see what we can do. And I never knew I was good at anything outside of baseball. It was just baseball. Played sports. I was always good at sports, but like, it's kind of that time in my life when I'm like, I don't know if I'm even gonna be good at this shit. You know what I mean? And by, week 3, 4, I'm like, fuck, I got this. Yeah. And you started leading more. You started helping more. You started kind of taking a leadership position. And then the physical fitness was easier, right? And started being one of the front in line of the runs. And you started, maxing PT tests. And you're like, oh, shit, I didn't know I could do that. And as that started happening, I started believing, like, maybe this Ranger thing is for me, you know?
Absolutely.
You start hearing the horror stories, Ranger, this is so hard. And this, and then you're like, fuck, I've never, the hardest thing I've ever done before the military was Hell Week in football. And I'm not sure if any of you guys played football, but like that Hell Week is the other thing that people tell you, like, it's so hard, you might quit, you're gonna, And so when I didn't quit that, I was like, well, I could put up with more. There wasn't a threshold yet. Yeah. Then you get to basic training and still there's not a threshold there that's pretty challenging. It's just, it sucks, The airborne wasn't challenging at all, right? And then I'm like, oh man, I'm losing my physical fitness abilities right now. So I better.
Was just telling him the other day, I'm like, I think I spent airborne school just completely wasted the whole time.
Dude, every weekend we're out, we're drinking. Dude, every weekend we're out and running, and we're out drinking. And I was luckily with the older group of dudes that we were like, we'd get a hotel, we'd share it, we'd all go work out, then we'd go drink. You know what I mean? So we had this kind of mindset of like, let's stay ready. Yes. Yeah. And then me and one of my really good friends, he was in line with me. We'd get in trouble intentionally just to do push-ups. Like, we got to be ready for this Ranger PT test. So we're doing all this intentional just fucking off,
Sounds like you're a Ranger early on.
I felt like, people were like, that's not how Rangers are. I'm like, bitch, I'm pretty sure this is how Rangers are. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so we were just getting in trouble the whole time, making sure they smoked us, and we just yell, can't smoke a rock, Sergeant, dumb shit, playing these games. Yeah. But I knew what I was trying to be prepared for was, this Ranger selection we keep hearing about, this inevitable force that, most people quit. And once we got through airborne and, the RIP cadre picks you up, it's like, goddamn.
It becomes real.
Yeah, this is no joke. Yeah, and that's where I started thinking, like, maybe I will quit. I don't know.
But that's what the first couple of weeks of selection is for, specifically.
Completely just crush nuts.
It's just, I don't know what yours look like, but we had to pretty much take apart the whole bay on the 3rd story, bring it all downstairs, put it in formation as it was on the 3rd floor. And we just had to keep going until 8 people dropped.
That's great. Yeah, that's the games you play.
And it's like, hey, we're not going to stop. And you're just bleeding from all the metal freaking things that you're moving down these 1950s stairs, you know. and you're like, golly, like this is challenging. Because basic training to me as well was like, I was like, this is fun. Yeah. I had fun. I was like racing camp. The drill sergeants, it was
learning
a
good
time.
Too. Yeah.
And you're learning a lot and you're feeling a part of a team and all this stuff. You get to selection, you're like just wrecked.
Yeah. We had a Sergeant Blum, wherever he is now. He was a god back then for us. And he had a Doberman Pinscher who would chase us. And so you're at Cole Range. Cole Range is this big open area where they just dust you off, and you do land nav during the day, and then at night they just fuck you up and try and get people to quit. Yeah. And they're drinking sodas and eating burgers in front of you, and they're like, "Hey, just quit, Rip." They call us Rip. They call us Rip, right? Because it's Ranger Doctoral Program. Yeah. Just quit, Rip. Yeah. Hey, you got a soda. You got a burger for you. We'll give you a hot dog.
First person quits gets a Snickers bar.
Yeah.
Come on, guys.
Come on, Rip.
Who wants it?
Yeah, it's easy. Yeah, you don't want this. You don't need to do this all night. And pays to be a winner, Rip. Pays to be a winner. So if you're first, you get to rest. Everyone else, fuck off. Do it again. Yeah, and so it's this thing, right? That's part of the game. And eventually you start to realize, I think when you're more mature, you realize it's a game. You're like, I'll figure it out. You know what I mean?
I also think on the opposite end of being young, when I went through 17 years old, like being young also, I had no idea what life was about except them telling me what the fuck to do.
Yeah, too dumb to quit.
What
right?
real hard was.
See, ignorance is bliss, baby. I was just like, all right, I'm running.
Well, it's funny because I had a kid named Strickland who was in my basic training with me, whose father was a kind of a legacy special forces guy. And I didn't know anyone to quit. It didn't really affect me when strangers quit. I'm like, well, I don't know who the fucking dude is. But Strickland was in front of me, and we were doing another lap, and he ends up running straight to the burgers and hot dogs, and I was like, "What, Strickland? What are you doing?" I was heartbroken.
My heart breaks.
Because now I know the guy, and I never thought he'd quit, and that was probably the first where like, oh God, like I better keep this mindset. I need to stay in the fight of this because we all have our reasons why. And I kept thinking about my daughter, and I kept thinking of my dad. Kept thinking about my dad. I'd never want to disappoint that man because it's my father, and I'm waiting for him to have that pride look on his face. And my daughter, who, you want to be an example for. And so, I got through the training, and, essentially the rest of my career was really trying to keep my kids proud and my father proud. And so every kind of hardship was based on trying to, thinking of them. So deployments to Ranger School, eventually to whatever other training I continued to put myself through.
Yeah. So you make it through all your RIP. You end up at 2nd Ranger Battalion.
Yep.
So you're ACO?
ACO first platoon. Yep. Okay. Bad mothers.
Hey, so you guys are.
We got history. We got history.
We do.
Yeah,
we've been in the same areas.
Yeah. Small world. Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
And that's a small community. So you make it through there. You show up at BAT, and I imagine you guys are getting ready to deploy here pretty quickly.
Yeah, we were supposed to deploy within the next 30 days for reach back bird is what they call it. Okay. And once we got to battalion, Pat Tillman was killed. And we got that notification. Me not knowing much, I started Googling Pat's name more. Like I heard the stories. And then I was like, oh shit. And all right, the initial call for all of us was that, he was killed by enemy fire. And we were like, that's crazy. And then the next thing you know, then the news comes out that it was friendly fire. Yeah. And so the battalion was kind of, in a frenzy, man, trying to figure that out. We had a lot of the guys who got injured during that day come back early. We had Pat's brother come back early. And my job was a lot of us new privates don't do much but like security and driving people around, just different things. And so we were kind of tasked with that. And you heard the whispers of what happened, but we were never privy to the information. They came back from the reach back bird. We were all in a kind of we were in the open bay, that kind of that open bay down the second area, right? Where first platoon, second platoon connect. Yep. And the first bird came back, and they told us buy porn and beer for them, so they're happy, and we did, and they beat the dog shit out of us.
Sounds about right.
And I was like, wow. And I was like, what am I doing here?
And I love this aspect of it too, is because you go from basic training and you could be the tip of the spear there, like PT stud, an animal, right? You're like, I got this. I just put on my wings at airborne school, RIP. I'm selected. I've made it. And then you get there, and you are at the tippy bottom of that totem pole.
Nobody.
Like where they drink the beers that you purchase. And you remember those T sections?
Yes.
Duck walking across while they're throwing empty bottles at you.
I've been hit. Yes. I got hit with a pellet gun once in the ankle. Same kind of game. Privates jump across the hall, and you're like, for what? Got shot. Okay.
Playing duck hunter.
It was being a private in battalion is not easy.
Yeah.
Even if you're a wartime private, it doesn't matter. It's not easy because there's this still old school, rituals that happen, and it's okay for me. It's like I don't have a problem with it per se. There's some safety stuff that I'd be more cautious about. But I do think there is a space where it needs to happen. We need to initiate our guys in a way. We raise them as fighters. Yeah, everybody fights. Like I said, day one I got my ass kicked, and I didn't fight back because I'm like I'm not gonna do that. But you sit there and get choked out, and you wake up and you're like, that sucked, And then the next day it's like, all right, privates, who's the strongest out of you guys? Fight each other, and you're like, what the fuck?
And the platoon wars.
Yep, the platoon wars.
I mean, you would get
full fist fights.
It's hard to explain.
It's
to
more
anyone.
choking. We do jiu-jitsu.
Okay,
we jiu-jitsu the shit out of each other. It's really what it is.
It's no striking, but it is old school, medieval, clashing on the battlefield. You start on this end, you start on this end. 80 freaking people.
A stranger walking there would be like, "What was that?" And all you have to hear is one leadership say, "Privates, go!" And you're like, "Room!" And you ball each other up, dude.
But you feel the whole building, right?
Yes.
Remember those old buildings where you have 3 floors and the whole building starts shaking,
rumbling
from the first floor to the second. They're coming because we're on that middle floor, right?
Yeah.
And just it's all hell break loose. You tap out,
crazy,
you fuck off.
dude. Crazy.
I was dragged into it. The most humbling experience is one of these hazing moments where I was in the hall. We're all freaking going at it. I'm like crushing people left and right. I'm like, yeah, I'm good, right? And I get swooped up just by the neck, 2 arms back, brought into a room, duck tied or hog-tied. Hog-tied. Yeah. And I just remember thinking, like, as powerful and as trained as I could possibly be, a couple of dudes is all it takes to take my life away.
Yeah.
So
real quick.
Those moments like that breed that resilience.
Yeah, that was an interesting. You had to get through that.
I think from the outside looking in, the Rangers and the Marines still do a very good job at this. Even to this day, they do a very good job at making you fucking earn it. Yeah, and that's been their only marketing play since the beginning of time. Is, do you want it? Yeah, you can have it, but you got to earn it. I think Rangers are probably the only group left who, outside of the Marines, who really do that. I think it's
why we have so much respect from the higher tiers. Yeah. Because they know that it's a culture of brutal fight and make it happen. We're raising pure tough fuckers. And you have to be there.
And it's also, there is a tremendous amount of respect in the special operations community for Rangers. Yeah. And I think it really drives from the fact of like, hey, you could be mission oriented, but when shit goes wrong, who's 911 on special operations? Who's the muscle coming in?
We are the muscle because we're brute force and we're by the numbers, right? Like you got a platoon of monsters who, not thinkers in a sense, like the younger dudes, just tell me what you want me to do and I'll fucking do it. And that's where I was. Preach. And when I raised privates, my privates were, don't fucking question me, motherfucker. Do what the fuck I say. And they're like, Roger that, Sergeant.
And that's it. There's no split thought. It's like if you point and say go, and I think that's what makes you such a good, like when you get into your leadership positions in battalion, team leader and squad leader and above, you really get into that operating mentality too of saying, I could work I've worked in small teams too. I've worked to up like as small as 4, when I was doing combat search and rescue in Iraq. So you could work on small tactics, but also large scale, like battalion, regimental. I mean, when we did the regimental training events, you're talking airfield seizures where you have 3 battalions, or 2 battalions that are involved.
Echo, you're here. And you're like, Pico's here. Damn, we're doing this. 500 and watching these dudes jump in, bro, and just clearing it out.
And it's the sickest thing, airfield seizure. I will say, when I was a private doing airfield seizure, it was the most confusing thing.
I was confused, bro. I just followed my leader, like, whatever you want me to do. I don't know what the fuck.
Nowadays, chaos. In hindsight, like, do you often think you're like, man, if I had the brain that I have now, I'd be a much better ranger?
Absolutely,
because I was like, David, whip out your fucking compass, find your bearing, and you'll know exactly where to go. There's only 2 ways to go on an airfield.
It was just, Ranger Battalion is a lot of learning from drinking from a fire hydrant.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it really was. You learned a lot. I was telling someone the other day, you learn how to clear a room, and the next day you're turning around as a private. You learn how to clear a room, turn around, you're teaching other privates. All right, privates, teach class. And you're like, all right, 4-man stack, go. And you're like, so you're taught the positions of higher levels at a very young age, and you're expected to turn around and teach them back. And that's what made us so good at what we did. That's what made Ranger Battalion like so proficient.
And then you go to Ranger School. And then you go to the most premier leadership school in the military for infantry-based tactics. So you get put in as an E3. I was put in
as well.
platoon leader positions on direct action raids. So attack like objectives on.
Yeah. Dude, I had
so you learned that from a small
as a young dude.
So as a private, you learn how to lead as a platoon leader, as a
that's what happened
captain.
in Ranger School. In Ranger School, I had a master sergeant say, "Hey, what's your rank?" I was like, "I'm a PFC." He goes, "What the fuck?"
Yeah,
I thought I was an E6 at least.
At
least. I'm like, "No, I'm a PFC."
By that time, you have 2 deployments under your belt before you even go on average.
That's exactly what happened. And so I'm teaching these guys all the basics how to handle these weapons. Well, most of the PLs who just graduated from, whatever that officer training Canada school,
OTC,
whatever it was, they don't know how to manage a lot of the weapons we do.
Sure.
So I'm showing them that, and I'm doing this, and I'm managing like, and they're like, "What's your rank?" I was like, "I'm a PFC motherfucker. I'm trying to get my specials right now."
Just trying to get your E4. But then things change when you go to battalion as an E4 now, and you're tabbed, and you get this shift, right? One, you want to rain hell on all the privates to pay it back, right? I was bad. Spec 4 Mafia, right?
I get calls. I still get calls today. I was bad. I was a monster. But it's because when you get the tab, you're trying to earn a position as a team leader. Yeah. The coveted spot in Ranger Battalion, be a team leader. Eventually get a squad, right? And so you crush nuts for anyone who's outside of the regulations of what you expect out of Ranger Battalion.
Absolutely. But the guys who survived you, remember you.
Bro, I get the calls now, and I'm like, my bad, bro.
They'll tell it.
But I'm only doing what happened to me.
Exactly.
They'll tell a little bit of a payback. I think it was when I became a team leader in E5 where I just, I really learned to let that go.
Yeah.
It became more applicable, way of punishing. So,
exactly.
So if you're not holding form on your ready ups, we're going to do something that trains you to do that more, right? We're going to stay in a aggressive isometric position until you can get your back.
Yeah. My era was, we had a dude in Afghanistan, had his hand taped to his M4 going to chow hall. like I don't know whatever. It was punishment that we thought was funny as well as maybe it'll teach him a lesson to keep his finger off the freaking just stupid shit, right?
Absolutely. Pure sarcasm, ridicule.
Yeah.
Viable methods.
That's my career in Ranger Battalion.
But it sets the tone, right? It sets the tone for what you do after, right?
Yeah, I think I never had a creed or any kind of guiding principles besides God, right? Besides my faith, there was nothing else as a man that I really had. And I think till this day, I recite the Ranger Creed in my car sometimes like a weirdo.
No, it's not weird.
You know what I'm saying? And I genuinely, you listen to the words, you're like, man, I'm trying to live my life in a way that, one, to make the legacy of the Ranger Battalion proud, but also my kids and myself. And, and keeping on those ideas, man, it really has helped me continue to push. I love when I post something and someone goes, "Lead the way, Ranger." I'm like, fuck yes, dude. That feels good to know that people know my background as a Ranger, but two, that I'm still leading the way in what I do even today.
Yeah, the way you want to.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you had a couple deployments while you were in
I did 2 to Afghanistan, 1 to Iraq.
Okay.
Our Iraq deployment was Mosul, which was a really good deployment.
Okay.
As in we received a presidential citation award because we dismantled the Mosul at the time. The top dude they had was named Abu Taha, and we were there running and gunning until we ended up actually catching the target, which was a pretty successful deployment for us.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Did anything else stand out from those deployments? I know you got a lot of life after this.
When you losing, that same friend that was one of my best friends in Airborne was killed in training.
Okay.
And that was a hard one. Yeah. And then when I lost Sergeant Braza and Sergeant Brim, those were a big impact to us. I was injured from Ranger School, so I was with the notifications of collecting all their stuff, packing it up for the families, and then taking them to their final resting place. So I was part of that detail. And that was probably those losses. Mm-hmm. And then we had a few other, but those 3 impacted me personally in a way that I was ready to get out and try my hand at the civilian side because I know they wanted that as well. Yeah. And my transition into the Border Patrol was only initiated by Sergeant Braza giving me the idea for it.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you wanted to honor his legacy and his memory and pursue
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah. Okay. Never would have thought of it until he's the one who mentioned it first.
Okay. How was your transition out? Did you have any issues during transition? A lot of people struggle. Some people don't.
I'll say I didn't even know what struggle looked like. You know, I think I was constantly struggling, but couldn't even recognize that because I didn't know how to define that.
Yeah.
I was a heavy drinker.
Sure.
I'm the guy who started and wouldn't stop until I fell asleep. And at the same time, kept myself very busy because of my kids. And so I went to school full time. I worked full time until I got into the Border Patrol. My life was just be as busy as possible. Yeah. And
avoidance.
Right. Yeah. Avoidance. Right. Like
we know that
masking.
Now.
You know?
Yeah. But I mean, that's what you do in regiment, right? It's the 6 months on, 6 months off, which the 6 months off is training your ass off to go back on again. So I think we do a lot of that masking where all we're doing is trying to keep ourselves busy. Yeah. But the moment we're not busy, that's when the bottle comes out. That's when the thoughts come out.
Yeah.
Don't want to deal with those thoughts.
Yeah. I think I didn't realize I was struggling. There was a few instances early on, and I knew there was some remnants of some kind of post-traumatic stress that I just didn't want to acknowledge. But I remember driving in Arizona, and the area that I'm talking about it's called Ellsworth, going into Hunt Highway, and it's this turn where these mountains look very similar to Afghanistan. And the houses they built on the left-hand side of that are like these square hut-looking houses that are similar to Afghanistan again. Houses. So you're like, what the fuck were they thinking? And so, my last deployment was Afghanistan, and so as I'm rounding that, and I stopped this one stoplight, and I'm sitting there thinking like, there could be a sniper right there. And like, damn, if he hit me, what would happen? And I remember taking my foot off the brake and just my car's rolling because I'm in a daydream. I had these day dreams of in combat and how would I defend it and what would I do? And in that, and my wife at the time just smacks me and goes like, dude. And I'm like, oh shit, my bad. And that was like a first moment of like, what the hell was that? And just thinking the surroundings were so similar, I knew that it still affected me in a way of like trying to prepare mentally for it, prepare for like the worst case scenario and kind of those ideas. And that was the first time I was like, oh, that was weird. And then, you had these dreams that were pretty challenging. And, I wasn't in a relationship where I felt comfortable even talking about those things because I felt, we had a very unhealthy communication. And so I wasn't going to give her that to more fuel to the fire of making me, degrading me or anything. Yeah. So I held on to it. And when I got into the Border Patrol, it was like a blessing. It was that one. I think when everyone gets out of the military, when you find that career that you're like, oh, I can hang my hat on this. Yeah. It's like, man, all the stress is gone now. Now I'm a federal agent. I'm gonna be able to make enough money for my kids, and I'm done. Yeah. I'm done with this chase of trying to transition. But it was early on in the Border Patrol where I'm wearing the same Merrill boots I wore in Battalion, had my similar gloves, I had night vision on, and I'm carrying an M4, and I'm chasing a dude who smells very strong of body odor, very similar to Afghanistan.
Drops you right back in.
Bro. And they just recently burnt trash there and like sewage, and it smelled like fucking the same. So all that connection, I'm chasing a guy, which the ROE is obviously very different. In Iraq, Afghanistan, squirters, whatever.
No need to chase.
You can engage, right? And someone who's just running to try and get away from us in the border, is not necessarily a threat, a lethal threat by any means, just a dude who's been walking for 7 days and just trying to get away.
Yeah, sure.
And so as I'm chasing, I pull up to shoot him in the back, and then I come off, I ran again, and I'm sitting thinking like, where the fuck am I? In the moment of just chase, I'm like genuinely like, whoa.
Deja vu.
Yeah. Did I go back to Afghanistan?
Yeah.
Or am I dreaming
Have
right
I been
now?
there the whole time?
Right. So completely lost. And I took the selector switch off of safety to put the semi a few times. And I come back and like, damn it, caught him and I put him down. And I told my boys to grab him and I took all my shit off. And I was like, whoa, bro, that was crazy. And it was the first time I was like, maybe I should talk to someone about that, right? Because I knew the consequences of shooting that dude would have put me in prison.
Absolutely.
It didn't matter why.
Yeah.
You're done.
Doesn't matter.
And it was a really weird time in my life where I'm going through a divorce. I'm drinking all the time at night to try and get over some of these dreams that I'm struggling with. I'm trying to see my kids as much as possible, but this divorce made everything just difficult. So like nothing was going good. So it's my point in my life I was like, fuck. And that's when I was like, I told my boy, I was like, bro, I almost shot that dude. And that was when I was like, maybe I should seek counseling.
Now, did you have anyone to check you? Did you have someone close enough to you at the time who was like, hey, motherfucker?
No, because at the same time, like, in the heat of that weird stuff in the border, not everyone kind of pays attention to all of it. At the same time, like, he was probably like, that was crazy. What was he doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah. You also got night vision on that are tubes.
We're here, right?
40-degree field of view.
So I just knew that I almost shot him for sure. Like, for sure. You know what I mean?
I meant more in the grand scheme of things, like the point of your life, like going through the divorce and drinking so much.
I think everyone at the time of my life then was drinking with me.
Yeah.
You
kind
know
of
what
enabling.
I mean? We're all just having a good time.
Yeah.
We're all federal agents in a town. We're making good money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We're popular with the women there. Sure. It's just everyone's looking to get married to an agent. In the border town.
Get me out of here.
So it wasn't like it was common ground for everyone.
Yeah.
You know, I think I was struggling deeper than I would even let anyone know.
Sure.
There was one friend that he was the one who talked to a counselor, said, hey, I think you got to talk to Vince. He's struggling. And that was the first time I did counseling or was open to it. And the counselor, she's in Austin, Tanya Glenn. I'll always give her the credit for opening that door for me. She is an EMDR specialist. And what she did was say, hey, I don't give a fuck about your feelings. I just want to fix this. And I was like, that's cool. Very different approach.
Finally, where do we find those ones?
Right. That was super special because I've done the VA thing early on when my first wife was like, go to VA, get figured out, you know? And I did a group session. And at the time, Army Ranger, you build a little bit of an ego when you're a Ranger in a battalion because the tambourine kind of sets you apart. Sometimes you start to believe all that shit. And in a circle of other veterans who are struggling, I was like, some cook was like, I check my doors every night and I do a 360 security every night. I'm like, fuck this dude. I fucking walked out, right? Because I'm like, fuck you, cook. Make some fucking eggs. You know? And I was so angry at the time of like, nobody understood me. They don't get me, blah, blah, blah. And I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for counseling. And so fast forward, I was like, I'll talk to this lady. So we did sessions of EMDR. And the crazy part about it was I had this dream. I don't care how long we go. If we go long, do you mind? No. Okay, cool. Yeah. I'll just text my wife. You got a girlfriend? No. I had this crazy, so there was something that happened in Iraq that I'll say it this way. I'll say it this way. During an event in Iraq where we were being ambushed, a vehicle ran into one of our vehicles and engaged. Innocent bystanders were killed in that because the vehicle was used and had them in it. And I remember coming out the back of the Stryker as everyone's engaging and taking a look and trying to take shots into the same vehicle, seeing that. And at a point I saw almost like connecting eyes. And as we drove off, I remember the radio chatter was like, count the bodies, and everyone's like 6. And I'm not sure if anyone else saw that, but from my angle, I saw that there was women and children in the back. Now, not a lot. It was like 3, right? It was 2 older women and like a child. And that one stuck with me personally because I had eyes on. And there was nothing we could have done about it. It was one of those scenarios where like you had to engage on the 2 in the front, boom, shooting out the back of the window, the Top Gun lighting it up, and everyone just kind of throwing supplemental rounds in there just to kind of support, right? So there was nothing that could have changed from that. That was like, it would have happened a million times over and over. You couldn't have done anything better. But witnessing it and then everyone kind of like quietly ignoring it, haunted me personally.
There's that. I mean, there's the aspect that we saw overseas where they will use their families.
It's part of the TTPs that they do.
Burn their kids alive.
Absolutely.
Get a helicopter to come
100%. You know.
Yeah.
And so, it wasn't uncommon for this to happen.
Yeah.
It was uncommon for me to see that and to almost lock eyes, and then for everyone to kind of just. And I know for a fact we ended up paying the family because of that. That's, it's what happens. But none of us have ever said it publicly to each other. Not fucking once, still to this day.
And it's a hard and slippery slope to talk about that kind of thing, because at the end of the day, unless you've been to war, unless you were boots on the ground, you will not understand that.
Yeah, and you know what's funny about that? When people were, I see people talk on X about like, oh, this special operations guy did some vile things in combat. I'm like, I'm not questioning shit in combat, bro, because I wasn't there, and I know how fucking weird scenarios can get. You know what I'm saying? I know how weird they can get.
And also, like, think about that charged energy that you have. That you have been trained to be this indomitable force. That's unstoppable, and when you get a squad together, ferocious animals.
Yes.
Right. The ability of Rangers to be able to identify that threat is substantial, right? You CQB, you've trained it.
Yep.
You got your ass reamed up for shooting the balloon when you're not supposed to, right?
Yep.
But that's also that mentality of like kill, kill, kill.
Yeah.
Being able to shut that off, it takes a moment too.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting thing about combat that I think like I was always prepared for us to go to war. And then when you get there and you realize there's other things that happen in war that I never kind of accounted for, I guess, mentally.
You can't prepare for
It's not the EKIAs.
Right.
It's the civilians. It's the children who look at glow sticks when you bust through the door. It's the kids
wives
that are
who
throwing grenades off the
scream.
roof.
It's the wives who scream.
The
it's
women
these,
that are laying there
things that
screaming.
That's the stuff that like I think about more than anything.
Yeah, 100%.
And it's a trip to me because I told someone about the sticks. I told someone about Afghanistan, and he was like, "What?" He goes, "Bro, they don't know anything about it,
Magic.
dude.
Yeah.
You can calm a group of kids with one, and they're like,
what is this?"
And they sit there, and you're like, "Yeah, we just fucking."
I mean, it's like the movies of watching real life magic happen to these guys.
Yeah,
and then I'll never forget. I was going at. We were doing a direct action raid in a village.
Yeah,
like a pretty urban style village. Like there's a good population there. We're going door to door, and we go through. And I remember standing there, and this kid, he's just freaking in the corner, and I pop a blue chem for him, and I give it to him. That haunted me in a way where I was like, "What if this was my home?"
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And like,
dude, it's something I write about. It's exactly the thing that like when we're there, we're fighting a war, and I honestly don't give a shit about nothing but making sure we all come home. I don't care about nothing, dude.
Yeah.
But you flip that switch on me, homie. You know what I mean? I prayed my whole life that no one would break into my house, and I'm over here fucking kicking in motherfuckers' houses and snatching them right out of their fucking beds, dude.
And how many times you got bad intel?
Yeah. Dude, yeah.
Or like it's cleared out. And if a SWAT team broke into my house at 3 a.m. and I was dead ass asleep with my family present, I can't see shit. They got night, but whatever it is, I'm most likely reaching for my gun.
Yep. And just gonna be pumping rounds, and there it is.
And I would probably get devastated. I would get destroyed.
Yeah.
Right.
Also consider the mindset that they're in. If a chem light is magic to them, all the technology that you're carrying and integrated with,
they used to,
that is magic to them. Imagine someone entering your home and having unexplainable technology.
Part of the psychological operations missions that happened during that time would call us those whose eyes glow green.
Yeah. And that's
because
exactly
of our night vision.
That's exactly it. Is I felt like I was like, to this kid, I'm not David Reid.
Yeah.
I haven't done the things I've done at home, or have laughed and cried and blah blah blah. To this kid, I'm soldier.
Yeah, you're the guy whose eyes glow green, and everyone's heard about.
Yeah, green
and you come to the house and you kick in doors and you take dads.
Yeah,
take dads.
Yeah,
and strip their mothers.
Yes,
fucking boogeyman. Yeah,
dude,
legitimately,
it's a crazy thing. So for me, I was hung up on that day. And I'd have this dream of the same woman looking at me as if I just killed her husband and in complete shock. And then the next day, the dream would be, she's asking for my help. And that was where I was so struggling with. And so I did EMDR sessions, and genuinely that visual I've never seen again. I might wake up and feel the same way, but I've never seen it. And so that was the first time I was like, oh crap, there's something there.
And this works.
Yeah. And so since then, I've kind of been on a tear of learning more about psychology.
And that started the journey. That kick-started the journey, and I'm sure helped with your career with the Border Patrol as well.
Yeah.
Kind of polarizing yourself, saying like the ready ups probably went down a little bit as well.
Well, I was a medic. I became a medic for the Border Patrol because I wanted to be on that side of it. I wanted to try and help more on that side. Yeah. Part of my fight with God was always to try and earn his love back. What I know now in faith and what I've studied, I don't have to earn anything back, right? But at that time, that's how I saw faith. I had to earn my keeps. I had to earn more good points to get into to heaven. That's how I saw faith back then. I was always felt guilt ridden from everything we experienced and volunteering to be a guy that does this, right? And so, I don't see it that way now, but that's how I viewed the world, and so became a medic to try and hopefully offset the good with the bad,
add some good points in there. Yeah.
Right. And so I became a medic with the Special Operations of the Border Patrol, and became a medic attached to BORTAC. So I was a BOR-STAR agent attached to BORTAC, which is like a civilian version of a pararescue jumper, is what it is.
And what led to kind of your transition out of actual kind of the law enforcement aspect of it into the ambassador position?
I started to want to be more of a better father. I went through the divorce. I became a single father of the 4 kids. And so life is a little different when you actually have to be a dad and not just like a paying the bills. I had to show myself to them. And part of the process of me kind of becoming a better father to them and healing some of my trauma was like allowing them to know me as a human, as the funny person that everyone else gets to know that they've never seen. They've seen the disciplinary guy and the guy who pays the bills and the drunk. They never really got to see the funny man, right? The guy who takes the shield down a little bit and just be human again, And so in the process of trying to be better for them, and as my life kind of was kind of becoming so special operations oriented again, like it was in Battalion, I realized I was missing so many important days of my kids' lives. And fortunate enough, I was able to have a business with some friends that supplemented the financial side of my life. And so it was kind of a calculated risk. I decided to resign and focus more on the kids and this business that was doing well, and just put that running and gunning side of me away. And fortunately enough, the film industry did really well, and I was able to capitalize on that by making some good money, and met my current wife, who we've leaned further into the wellness side of things in my life and improved that. And watching the media kind of try and tarnish the career field that I loved so much, and these political agendas giving their opinions of the Border Patrol, and the Border Patrol not using their voice in a way to kind of counter that. It didn't help them. And people I knew would talk shit on the career field and have no real understanding of it. And so I got really frustrated, and so I wrote a book. I wrote a book called Borderline, and it was my time as a Border Patrol agent, essentially explaining the career field and how important it is to the United States. I think it's secondary to the military because they defend the homeland on its borders, which is the next big threat for us in any kind of terrorist threats and drugs. And so I felt the career wasn't getting that exposure because the Border Patrol kind of took a position of like, let's just not say nothing and let them do their thing and it'll blow over. Well, 8 years of not blowing over became a really hard place now for the Border Patrol. Recruitment was low. The morale was low. They have one of the highest suicide rates per capita of any law enforcement in the nation. And the world has no idea what the career really consists of because the media has kind of ran that narrative on its own. And so I took it upon myself to write this book, and then start going public on podcasting and explaining like, hey, here's how it works, right? That put me into the space of journalism that I do now with the Border Patrol as well. I currently hold a position with the Border Patrol that I am considered the ambassador of the Border Patrol. And what I do is in the strategic communication space, I create docuseries episodes of me embedding with them and explaining kind of the day in and day out job of the Border Patrol and different aspects of that. It's a wholesome counter to the negative talk. It's just, let me just show you and not tell you. Yeah. Come with me as I ride along and do the job. And then you can ask questions later. And so we have a show on the YouTube called Edge of a Nation that just me embedding with the Border Patrol. Next week, I'll be in Del Rio doing the same thing. Every month, I'm at a different sector or station, highlighting, their specialties, whatever it might be. And then I also have a podcast with them called Into the Fringe. And it's a podcast really meant internally. It's for them to have their own voices being heard, knowing that there's people out there talking about them, their career in a good light, and just giving them a voice again.
I imagine it's difficult for them to network within their own organization.
It is, and at the same time, they don't know how. You don't know how to speak at times that's going to be favorable to them, as well as without getting in trouble, because as a federal position, as a law enforcement officer in a federal position, they can't speak negatively against the administration, and they're not supposed to, right? Yeah. We're not supposed to have a political position.
Yeah.
But
not in the uniform.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And so they've had frustrations in the last 8 years, not just 4 and 8, right? Because the world wants to say this about them. Well, they can't publicly counter it, and so they now have a voice that does it in a way that's educational, that's appropriate, that won't get them in trouble, won't get anyone else in trouble, and just continues just to educate the world on exactly what the career field looks like.
It's a unique responsibility for something that even currently is heavily politicized.
Absolutely.
And not to dive onto the political spectrum, but I mean, the last few years, like you said, the last 8 years, Border Patrol, the border has been a
hot topic.
Yeah. It's something you see in the media every single day. Something you see on social media
it's top trending,
single day.
Top 3 every day.
Yeah. and continually. So I'm glad to see that you're able to give them a voice and help people realize that it's not these guys' decision. It's what they're being told to do.
Exactly, like what the process is.
Yeah, exactly.
I think the nation, those who, I guess, they don't really understand it, and they thought the Border Patrol was supposed to take a position of hold the shield and shove people back into their countries. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's more of like a prison riot concept, and just like we as Americans go to war with dignity, right? With the Geneva Convention and just dignity in how we treat people. Yeah. The Border Patrol is the same in that aspect. It's like, if you come across you've already broken the law, I'm not going to push you back into the river that you might drown. I'm just going to apprehend you and take you into processing. And whatever the administration, the executive branch have made a decision on what the processing efforts are now is how we'll do it.
That's how it's carried out.
That's it. And just like
same thing overseas.
Exactly.
It's not my decision to stand there.
Yeah, whatever the ROE is at the time.
Right?
Exactly.
I didn't choose to stand here and guard a poppy field. I was told to. You know what I mean? It's the same exact thing. I think it's great that you're bringing them a voice.
Yeah.
It's probably helping in a substantial amount of other areas for people to really understand
I think
how it is, maybe increase the funding.
I think the most important thing is that I would love to see recruiting go up because it's such an important career. It's such an important job.
It's across the board right now.
It's so important.
And I think it will.
I think it will. I think it will.
I think we're going to hit some polarization on these topics that, like I said, it was 8 years of this country has really been struggling for the last 8 years. And to open that up with, or right in the middle of that with COVID, we lost how to communicate with each other as well. So we relied heavily on the media aspect of things, which I will say is an absolute lie. It's just a lie.
It's just been tough. It's been tough. I just finished a master's in journalism, and
congratulations.
Thank you. And the funny thing is, the teacher's like, and I focus a lot of my projects were on border stuff, and he's like, "Be careful," and I'm like, "Me be careful? Have you heard what they've talked about the border for so long? Yeah. I'm actually giving you the truth right now, but people don't know that. Most people receive that information and think the truth is this." And I said, I'm actually on the border every week. Trust me when I tell you this is what's happening. And it's like, and my own instructor was like, "Oh, well, good job." It took a minute. He's like, "Be careful, you guys don't get into a narrative." I'm like, no. I'm telling you straight up, full transparency. Here's the video,
provable fact.
And they're just like, "Whoa!" And it's my effort to continue to do right by our country. People that don't receive information well. We're in a world where some people don't know how to receive information, don't know how to dissect it in a way that like I could take this truth from it and this is And so in another effort is just being someone who can create information for those and educate them and hopefully calm that argument, bring it more centerline. You know, I think these extreme polarizations don't work. The answer is right in here somewhere.
And that's where 90% of the U.S. sits anyways.
Yeah,
they're not
absolutely.
on the edges. They're in the middle. You go talk to anyone that you might disagree with them intrinsically, but you can still have a conversation. Yeah. You still have a beer together. You still have a meal together. It doesn't change things.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to ask how you ended up getting into Hollywood too, because that's a very unique change from everything else you've done.
Yeah. You know, I grew up in LA. So film was, there was always someone in your class that's dad was a producer or a music, something in the industry. Had a couple kids growing up that were child actors, you know, and so you seen it, you just didn't know how to do it. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool, but my parents both worked. They weren't ever going to try and put me into acting. They don't give a shit about that. You know what I mean? Yeah. By the time I got to college and I was playing baseball, doing theater classes was the easy A. Okay. So I took theater classes because for the good grades so I can play baseball. Sure. Fell in love with it. Absolutely loved it. My even teacher said, man, I think you have a future in this. But baseball was everything. And so I just decided to like put it in the back burner and maybe it'll never happen. Fast forward 2013, 2012, late 2012, Matt Best is doing YouTube videos and me and him deployed together. We were in Ranger Battalion together. He was with me. And he said, hey, man, you've always been a funny dude, man. I'd love to see you on one of my videos. I'm like, well, let's do it. I just laterally transferred to SOG with the Border Patrol, which is Special Operations Group, which is like our tier 1 element. And since I moved to El Paso, he moved to El Paso anyways because he was filming with the producer that he was filming with, was Jared Taylor. And he said, come do a video. Boom. I did a video and took off. That video went to 1 million views. Now it's probably at 7. And then he kind of invited me on full time. Like, why don't you just do this, give you a percentage of the company, and let's just keep making videos and have a good time. Yeah. And that's where it started. And it was great. But early on, I knew like, well, this is like acting and I want to be an actor. You know, like this opened the door to like, I can try now, you know? Make this happen. And so as we kept evolving these videos and they kept getting better and I kept leaning into like, this is acting. Like I'm a character. It's really all I've ever been on those videos was a character. Yeah, I was played Rocco, right? And I knew that. I wasn't good at filming. I wasn't good at editing. I had no other value to the team besides I answered a lot of the emails. I helped the customer service for the t-shirts. And I'm an actor. You know what I mean? And when we decided to produce a movie, we did Range 15. We were in LA, and I remember saying like, yeah, this is what I want to do. I would love to do this. It's just something about the acting side of things was therapeutic for me. It was a therapeutic response. Like it felt good to play this character, to do this bravado, this action, you know, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the whole filmmaking aspect. And when we got back from filming, when the movie came out, we kind of had a separation in the companies, and the boys went and focused on Black Rifle Coffee. Article 15 was dying. And I was like, all right, well, I'm kind of done with this. Sure. Walked away from it all. And I produced a short film called Long Way Back. And it was kind of a emotional film that was like a poem narrated. And that was kind of about post-traumatic stress. And that did well. And we took a couple film festivals, got some awards. And I got invited from there. One of the hosts of that award ceremony invited me to LA to do improv comedy. We did improv comedy called Dads in Parks, and it did really well. It blew up actually, and that got me to come back to. We signed a 2nd-year deal, it was like a small 2nd season of that. And while I was in LA, Mayans was auditioning. Oh, okay. Yeah. And I already knew like Mayans would be great. I looked the part. You know, I don't know if I'd ever get a chance. I called a couple homies that were in Hollywood. They're like, dude, don't even try. It's impossible. I was like, fuck. So then I called a different friend. I said, hey, by chance, I'm here in LA filming. Could I get an audition? I don't know how to do that. He goes, I actually know the casting director. Let me call. Sends my picture. That's awesome. Sends the videos I made, because in acting you need headshots and you need an acting reel. References. I already put it together from my little short film, from Range 15, from all the videos I did with Matt and Best. So I made myself a little reel already, and I had the headshots. And so I sent it forward. And she was like, he looks great. Can he act? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I want to see him tomorrow. I looked at my wife and I was like, oh, fuck. Like, this just happened. We got an audition. Yeah. And then I met with my boy, Steve Howie. He goes, you've already gone to war. So don't stress this. Be off book, meaning memorize your lines, right? And go in there, shake their hands, do your job, shake their hands, get out. I'm like, okay. Because he didn't want me to sit there and be like, oh, this is so amazing, guys. I can't believe I'm doing it. Thank you so much. He didn't want me to do one of those. He wanted me to just own the spot.
Be a professional.
Yeah, do it, show up, boom, thank you very much. And so I did that. And I brought my wife, and John Berthal made fun of me because of this. John Berthal is the actor from Punisher.
Yeah.
He made fun of me. He goes, you brought your fucking wife to an interview? I was like, I didn't think of it then. I was new. I'm just like, babe, let's go to this audition. You know, sat her down and I went back. Now that I look at it, it's funny because I didn't understand. I don't know what the fuck I was thinking. But whatever. We did it.
New here.
Yeah.
Don't mind me.
I'm new. And
awesome.
did the audition. It went well. And then we ended up flying home. And we got an email saying, now Kurt Sutter and Elgin James want to see us. Those are the two creators of Mayans. I was like, fuck. I don't know. I had like $700 in my account. Like we're in the middle of trying to figure out life at this time.
Yeah.
And we bought the ticket. My dad took me this time. I brought him to the audition. I went in there, and this time they gave me two characters. One's a serious one, one's a comedy one. And did the first one, no big deal. Did the second one now, and the comedy one, I remember I kind of blacked out in the sense of like, I don't remember. I remember everyone laughing. And then I was like, oh, cool. That worked. Nice. You know what I mean? Shook their hands, got the fuck out of there. And as I was leaving, two stories, right? So we're on the bottom floor. My dad's not a big guy. He's like 5'8". He jumps on my back. He's like, "Oh, Vinny, how was it?" And he's an avid motorcycle rider his whole life, right? In a Los Angeles City firefighter MC, right? You know what I mean? So like this whole thing to him is like exciting.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he's like, maybe there'll be a role for me. And he's jumping on back. I'm like, what the fuck? And Kurt Sutter was watching from the second floor, and he said that was the moment he chose me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so got the job.
Just that connection.
Yeah, that connection.
Off the room, out of the room.
Yeah.
Yeah, it made you real.
Yeah, that made it real. Exactly.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
And so we got the job, and we were acting it was a total of 6 years on the show. It was 5 seasons, and the last season I was a writer of the show with the team.
Very cool.
And it was
wicked.
Yeah, it was an amazing experience. Since then, I've produced a couple other films, and I've been acting in several other things. Yeah. Hollywood's been a little slow the past few years because of the writing strike and the acting strike still trickling in.
Yeah.
But starting in 2025, I believe we have some cool projects that are on the line, and we're hoping to produce.
That's
beautiful.
Awesome, dude.
Yeah,
that's a good life, man.
It's crazy.
I mean, we talk about this all the time. Is that resiliency, that you go through, kind of leads to just constantly pushing the bounds.
Yeah.
And pushing yourself to become bigger, better, faster, harder.
Yeah.
And it seems to me like you've had a successful career, and it's just starting. It probably feels like.
Yeah, that's what I think. It was just starting. Yeah, that's good.
It's funny how like timing and opportunity. We talk about this all the time. It takes, so much time as you think your whole life was being a ranger.
Yeah,
and then you realize as this time passes that was just a small portion, and that's what gives you the credibility to even talk about half the shit you talk about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been crazy. I think the Ranger Battalion definitely gave me a foundation that I continue to follow. But, there's a quote I say is that we're not the titles we chase, but the hard work it took to get there. Mm-hmm. And it's just like the hard work I took to become Ranger, that same effort can make me successful in anything else I put my mind to. Absolutely. And I've just been running with that, and it's just been working.
Seems to be working well for you, my friend.
It's working.
You got a really interesting story, and I'm really excited to see what you do next. We'd love to have you on next time you're about to release your next show or your whatever you're doing next, man.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm in San Antonio quite a bit too.
What's the name of your book?
Borderline. So Borderline, it's Defending the Home Front. You can find it on Amazon or Barnes and Nobles.
Okay.
I think they should still carry it.
And where can we find you?
Me, Instagram is vincent.rocco.vargas, and pretty much anywhere you find Vincent Rocco Vargas, you'll find me. The podcast we have on the border crisis, essentially, topic is one of the biggest podcasts in the world for the border topic. It's called Borderland, and you can find that everywhere. But it's produced by Ironclad, and besides that, we have our nonprofit and Tomorrow Battalion, and what we do is we help veterans and first responders and their families find different modalities of healing. Essentially, the gambit that I've went through, and now I have resources for all of them to try and help others heal the trauma before you go and distract them with fishing or camping or something.
Yeah.
Perfect. I love that aspect of it is heal first before we go on adventure therapy.
Yeah, before you give them a vacation.
I know that's
right?
I try to explain it to people, but I'm like, all right, whatever.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
When you get there, you get there.
Yeah, it's true. Well, Vincent, thanks a lot, man.
Absolutely.
I really appreciate your time. This has been the Medevac podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for watching. Go check out Vincent and all the stuff that he's doing. Check out Mayans if you haven't seen it. It's a badass TV show. Motorcycles, lots of shooting, lots of killing. I love it. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye. See you next time. Bye.
Thank you, guys.